Hey, everybody, this is Tim with Op-Ed Daily. So the Boogaloo Boys are back in the news. One of their, self-professed members, Ivan Hunter, was accused of traveling from Texas to Minneapolis to meet up with other members of the Boogaloo Boys to carry out acts of violence during the quote-unquote riots. Of course, without these agent provocateurs, would it have been a riot or would it have just been a protest? That still remains to be seen, and I'll actually get to some of that in just a minute. First, I'll explain what Ivan did. When the Minneapolis police precinct was shot at and torched, he was part of that. He was the one shooting at, and I guess it was 13 rounds he shot into the police precinct, and then helped them torch it, and obviously destroy it and break windows and all that stuff. This guy was actually texting or exchanging messages. It doesn't necessarily say they were texts. He was messaging a guy named Stephen Carrillo. Now, Stephen Carrillo had killed this security guard. He had this guy, Robert Justice, pull him up in a van, open the side door, and then they used a machine gun to kill this security guard, and then I believe it injured the other guy that was there. And then 8 days later, somebody finds this van and there's weapons and explosives in it. So federal authorities go to this guy's house and he starts shooting at him, kills another officer. And as that happened, after he had shot the officer, Carrillo was texting Ivan Hunter. And Carrillo was also a Boogaloo Boy. And he had told Carrillo had told Ivan Hunter that he was in hide mode. And Hunter told Carrillo to go for police buildings, and Carrillo said, "I did better, LOL." Right? So this guy just kills somebody. Well, he technically killed two people, and he's laughing about it. So the level of disconnect there between reality and fantasy is staggering, right? And this isn't the first time that we've seen these agent provocateurs from either white supremacist groups or from the Boogaloo Boys doing some violent things, right? I think there's a little more to this than that. And this is the reason I didn't want to do a deep dive necessarily into the Boogaloo Boys, because I think there's something else going on underneath this. And in order to explain this, I'm going to have to go to a YouTube video of a guy named Yuri Bezmenov. He was a KGB defector back in the 80s. This interview was 1984. And when he defected, he basically came to the country and laid out the plans that Soviet Union had to destroy America from within. Now, if you had watched this in 1984, 1985, you'd have probably not thought much of it. But when you watch it now, it's like, it's kind of mind-blowing. Let me go ahead and so I've got it queued up here. I've got all the times here of, what's important to go to anyway. But I'm going to leave a link to the video, and everybody that watches this video needs to go and see this video, this YouTube clip. So right here is the first question.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand. When the Soviets used the phrase ideological subversion, what do they mean by it?
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
Okay, so I'm going to just pause there and interject a little bit. That, nobody's able to come to these conclusions. He's basically talking about nobody knows what's true, what's false. There's so much misinformation and propaganda going on around you that you can't determine who's lying and who's telling the truth. And if that doesn't paint a picture of what we're dealing with right now, I don't know what does. All right, so we'll proceed here. I'm going to go to right here, stage one.
Basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. For the last 25 years, actually it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he is going to receive a kick in his fat bottom. When a military boot crashes his balls, then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragic of the situation of the...
Okay, so he again is describing what we are dealing with to an extreme level now. And what is interesting and very telling is that he said the demoralization process was already completed. This was in 1984. And I will point to Ronald Reagan, not saying that he was a Russian asset or anything, but I point to Ronald Reagan because that is the point where, from Reagan until today, our government has been largely no different from one party to the next party. Reagan, Bush, Clinton. Clinton, it was a neoliberal, still is a neoliberal, as is Hillary, as is Joe Biden. And neoliberals are not progressives. They're not Democrats, right? They are largely a conservative party that is okay with abortions. That's how I describe a neoliberal, right? They are pro-Wall Street, pro-oligarch, put all the money in the hands of the extremely wealthy. And this began with Ronald Reagan. And that would fit right in with the timeline. So then we get to the next stage, which is destabilization.
Demoralization. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation, what matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems.
Economy, foreign relations, defense systems. Destabilization takes 2 to 5 years. So right now we are dealing with a poor economy, terrible foreign relations. I'm not certain about the defense systems. I'd have to look into that. But think about our foreign relations, where we have a president who is stabbing our allies as much as he can and rooting for our, the enemies that we've had for years. And of course, he's all about Russia. So to me, it seems like we are at this last stage and we're moving into crisis mode, which is the next step. And I'll go ahead and fast forward to that.
The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, You have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." This is
Okay, so 6 weeks for crisis. Now, when I think of crisis as it relates to if this timeline is correct and if this is a plan that transitioned from the Soviet Union into Russia, imagine what will happen when Donald Trump loses, as he's stated, and as Boogaloo Boys have stated, and as white supremacists have stated, they are ready for a civil war. Right. And if Joe Biden wins, or if Joe Biden loses, what is the left going to do? I don't know if they are equally as able and willing to go out and be as violent as people on the far right, but it is absolutely possible. So this crisis could be coming up. And then the normalization would be after let's say it goes to a Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court that Donald Trump has handpicked, if they, put him in power despite, millions of mail-in ballots not even being counted or being counted and thrown away, then this crisis happens, and then it gets normalized after people start realizing, whoa, we are actually killing each other. A month and a half, 2 months, whatever. Who knows if that'll happen? These are just thought processes that I have in my head. Now I'm going to go ahead and fast forward here to this part.
Or not. Your leftists in United States, all these professors and all these beautiful civil rights defenders, they are instrumental in the process of the subversion only to destabilize the nation. When their job is completed, they are not needed anymore. They know too much. Some of them, when they get disillusioned, when they see that Marxist-Leninists come to power, obviously they get offended. They think that they will come to power. That will never happen, of course. They will be lined up against the wall and shot.
Okay, so with this, I think the Soviet Union didn't necessarily quite understand completely what civil rights defenders or whatever their entire psyche was. But they knew that when you put one side against the other side, and there was clearly, for a very long time, there have been two sides. And when you put them and pit them against each other during a crisis, this thing boils over. This thing that's been around for centuries now in the United States. Slavery, black disenfranchisement, that sort of thing. Minority disenfranchisement. All this stuff boils over. And what's the best way to get there? To get both sides to just hate each other. To get both sides to either not even necessarily hate each other, but think that they are supposed to hate the other person. Instead of looking at the government and saying, okay, I don't see any difference from this person on the left and this person on the right. Because if you go back through all of our presidents, going back to Ronald Reagan, the economic policies that have been spit out of our Congress since then have largely been exactly the same. There has been no difference when you look at it on a macro scale. Sure, Democrats abortion and, right wingers not abortion, but those are hot button issues that don't really have an effect on America as a whole. I'm talking about economic policies, foreign policies. The Democrats and the Republicans, despite what everybody thinks, when you go all the way back to Ronald Reagan, there has not been much of a difference between them. Think of war. They both go to war. The economy. They both treat Wall Street with kid gloves. They give them everything they can. Both parties do it. When it comes to taxes, they just lower the taxes on the extremely wealthy people. Antitrust laws, they don't bother with those anymore. So these things from one side to the next. And then right where you are, right after this African American male gets elected to the presidency, and you've got these agitated racists, whether on the right or the left, both exist. You get these agitated racists to see this other white guy, and he's talking nationalism. Oh, we got America, America, America. But then he gets in there, and it is us versus them. We're the patriots. They're the enemies, right? That's what we've been hearing. This push to get us to hate each other, despite the fact that both parties have been doing this for the entire time. And like he said, the leftists think, well, they'll get to take over, and then they'll be disillusioned when they don't, and then they freak out. I don't know that it's going to work in that way. I think that the two parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, those two are essentially the same. By and large, they do the same stuff. So they're on board, but then you have this wing of progressives. They don't want power and control. They want people to be able to not struggle. They don't want wealthy Americans being the only ones that get to eat at the table. Everybody else is having to pick up scraps, and that's because of both parties. And this propaganda has been fed to me my entire life. It took a lot of researching on my own to discover this and to really parse what was going on. And I really hope that everybody can see that both sides, both the left and the right, with the Boogaloo Boys, and then the left with the Antifa, I hope that they can realize that there are outside influences that have inserted themselves into our politics to push some agenda, whatever it is, into the fabric of our society. And when they did that, they spelled disaster for us, because we can't seem to find a way to realize that we're all getting played. We're all getting played, and we're doing exactly what they want us to do with this stuff right here with Stephen Carrillo and Ivan Hunter. All right, guys, please let me know what you think in the comment section, and hit the subscribe button. And if you want to get more updates, please hit that bell icon so that you can get notified when I drop another video. Thanks for watching. This is Tim with Op-Ed Daily. Peace out.